Hi everyone, welcome to our public webinar to discuss Latimer and Reddington's proposals for the Twyford Abbey site. Just going to give us a few minutes to wait for any latecomers, then we'll kick things off shortly. Just for anyone coming in, we're just giving a few minutes to wait for latecomers, then we'll kick things off in a few minutes. All right, at 6:02, I think we're going to start. Apologies to any latecomers that are coming in. So welcome again. This is our public webinar to discuss Latimer and Reddington's updated proposals for the Twyford Abbey site. I'm Theo Julius. I'm from London Communications Agency, LCA, and I'll be your chair for this evening. The purpose of this session is to present the updated plans for the site and for the project team to answer any questions that you may have. Just a bit of background, this is the third event we're running as part of this round of consultation. We had two drop-in events at the local St Mary's Church, one on Saturday, one on Tuesday that's just been, and we were pleased to have over 80 people come through the doors. We had a range of views, received some really helpful feedback. Followed an earlier round of consultation we had in December. We had a webinar on the early proposals. So before I hand over to the other panelists for some intros, I'm just going to touch on a few housekeeping points. This is a webinar, which means that we'll have a presentation and then we'll have a Q&A session. The presentation should take 25 minutes, half an hour, and then we've got until 7:30. So really, it's however many questions you have. On the questions, throughout the webinar, if you've got anything comes into your head, just put it in the Q&A box. We'll be monitoring that, and then I'll be reading out those questions at the end. And if you do have a question that you forget, or something you want to say after the webinar, or you want to have a meeting with the team, or anything else, you can get in touch with us by emailing twyfordabbey@londoncommunications.co.uk. That's the email on the screen there. That's twyfordabbey@londoncommunications.co.uk. We'll have that at the end, and I'll remind you again. We're also going to be putting a recording of this webinar on the website, which is also on the screen, twyfordabbey.co.uk, twyfordabbey.co.uk. On the website, you can also see the exhibition boards that we presented on Saturday and on Tuesday. So that's the best place to go after this webinar. So with all of that throat clearing done and housekeeping aside, I'm going to hand over to our panelists. So if we go to the next slide, please. So we'll start with David at the top, and if you could just scroll down and introduce yourselves, please.
Hi everyone, my name is David White. I'm the development manager for the project, and I work for Clarion Housing Group, not-for-profit developer and housing association.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Laura Stevenson. I am a director of Alford Hall Monaghan Morris, and we're the architects who are leading the master plan for the site, but also the refurbishment of Twyford Abbey.
Hi everyone, I'm Justin Kenworthy, partner with Barton Moore. We're the planning consultants for the project, so we are coordinating the planning submission and coordinating the consultation with the statutory and non-statutory consultees.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Tim Delatz. I'm a transport planner at Velocity Transport Planning, and we are the transport support for the project.
Okay, thanks everyone. I think we'll move on to the bulk of the presentation now. So next slide, please.
So this slide is just a bit of an introduction to Clarion Housing Group, who we are, what we do. So we are the UK's largest housing association, owning over 125,000 homes in England for 350,000 people and working across 150 local authorities. Our mission is to provide good quality, affordable homes and neighbourhoods to people who have been inadequately served by the market. Latimer Developments Limited is the private and commercial development company for Clarion Housing Group, and all of our profits are reinvested back into the social mission and to create new homes, as well as pay for the management upkeep of existing homes. We also have a charity as part of the group called Clarion Futures, which helps support communities where we work within, and helps us on our mission to be a social landlord, and doing more than simply providing a home. Next slide. Reddington Capital are our partner. They're not here this evening, but they are the joint applicant alongside ourselves, and they are in charge of the Abbey building itself. They've got a vast history of other historic buildings that they have renovated over the last few years, and they really we're working very closely in partnership with them to bring Twyford Abbey forward.
Great, thank you, David. So I'm from Alford Hall Monaghan Morris. We are the architects of the project. We are an award-winning architectural practice based in London. We work across a range of sectors, including housing, but we're also known for our work with existing buildings, historic buildings and listed buildings, which you can see on the screen. So some of the buildings you might be aware of, the redevelopment of Television Centre, which we worked on, and also New Scotland Yard on the embankment, so the reimagining of the Curtis Green building. Next. We're also working with BBUK, who are taking forward the landscape design of the scheme, which is obviously critical given the country estate nature of the site. And BBUK, again, have produced landscape for a number of award-winning projects, including the Stirling Prize-winning Goldsmith Street in Norwich, and are used to work in residential schemes, which are in areas which are kind of heavily planted with trees and woodland. So I'm going to start by just explaining a little bit about this incredible site. Next. So the site is located right on the edge of Ealing. The boundary of Brent, you can just see dotted in red on that slide. The solid red line denotes the area of the Twyford Abbey site. And the site is about 10 minutes walk at the moment from the Hanger Lane and Park Royal tube stations. Next. And the site is bound to the north by the North Circular Road. To the south, we have residential properties on Twyford Abbey Road. To the east of the site, we have West Twyford Primary School. And then we have the rear gardens of residential properties on Eva Avenue and Brentmead Gardens. So this is the existing site. North is off to the left of the page, and the whole site is bounded by red. So the Twyford Abbey site comprises the long vacant Twyford Abbey, set in approximately 5.5 hectares of ground. All of the site is metropolitan open land, and both the Abbey, which you can see in orange at the centre of the site, and the wall garden are Grade 2 listed. The Abbey itself is on Historic England's Register of Building at Risk. There are currently only 2 ways you can get into the site from Twyford Abbey Road, access points to the West Drive and the East Drive. There is currently no public access to the site and no access out onto the North Circular. Next. So the whole site is designated as Metropolitan Open Land. However, the Metropolitan Open Land performs extremely poorly against the purposes of Metropolitan Open Land, provides no public access or amenity value to the wider community at the moment. And this is a picture standing on the south lawn, looking towards Twyford Abbey. Next. So just a few photos within the site. So the site has a kind of country estate character. The photo on the left is looking down the original West Drive, which led to the Abbey. The photo top centre is Twyford Abbey. And that's probably one of its most significant elevations looking west. So you see the kind of original southern range and the replica range. The Abbey was extended in the 1960s, and the photo you can see on the top right shows a brick 1960s extension, which we think detracts from the character of the Abbey. At the bottom left is the walled garden, which is also grade 2 listed, which is currently derelict. So there's a huge opportunity to bring that back into use as a garden and improve the ecology in that area. And then to the northeast and northwest of the site, there are 2 areas of grassland. Next. We've also got some challenging boundaries to deal with, particularly to the North Circular, and how we deal with kind of noise, pollution, and visual intrusion from the North Circular will be key. We have the boundary to the residential properties on the east and the west of the site. So that's the photo you can see in the middle. And then on Twyford Abbey Road, currently there is no public access, nor the public able to appreciate the Abbey from Twyford Abbey Road. There's currently a fence, which you can see in that photo to the right. So just in terms of heritage, the Abbey is on Historic England's Heritage at Risk Register at the moment, and that is assigned the status of Priority A. That means it is at immediate risk of further rapid deterioration or loss of fabric. Next. So the Abbey was built for Thomas Willan just in the early 1800s, but it has been vacant since the Alexian brothers left in 1987. And since then, the condition of both the Abbey and the garden wall have deteriorated considerably, and they're now both in a state of dereliction. The photo you can see on the left-hand side shows the historic interiors, just as they were being lost to water ingress and structural collapse. And those interiors were cleared in 2017, and the Abbey is now a shell taken back to its brickwork with new floors. And you can see that in the photo on the bottom right-hand side. Next. What we've also done just to understand the heritage setting of the Abbey, we have prepared an analysis with our heritage advisors, Montague Evans, which considers that the contribution that the setting of the listed building makes to their significance too. So the areas which are very sensitive in terms of contributing to the significance of the building are the southern lawn to the south, which you can see in orange there, and the East Drive and the original carriage circle, which sits to the west of the Abbey. Of medium sensitivity are the areas just immediately east of the Abbey and immediately west and the West Drive. But then to the northeast of the site, northwest and along the North Circular, the site is much less sensitive in terms of the setting of the existing building. Next. So some other key constraints and opportunities for the site. So the site is covered by a site-wide tree preservation order, has a number of significant Cat A high quality trees, including 2 in green, which you can see just to the south of the Abbey, a number of Cat B trees, including some on the south lawn, which were conceived as part of the setting for Twyford Abbey when it was designed by William Atkinson. But there's also quite a significant amount of cat yew trees, trees which are dead or showing signs of significant irreversible decline. Next. Just in terms of ecology, so most of the metropolitan open land is actually poor semi-improved grassland. So that's the purple colour you can see on this slide. So the lawn and the grassland to the northeast and northwest of the site is poor in quality, but there are some areas of natural broadleaf woodland, particularly up the Western Drive and fringing the edge of the walled garden to the east. So just a summary of constraints. This is a challenging site in terms of the number of constraints we need to deal with. We have the derelict Grade 2 listed Abbey and walled garden, metropolitan open land, the kind of noise and pollution from the North Circular, the need to protect important views and the setting of the Abbey, the site-wide tree preservation order, the proximity and overlooking of the primary school, neighbouring residential properties, and then there are some areas of flood zones right to the edge of the site to the north. Next. So just in terms of the planning history of the site, there is an extant consent from 2017 for a private secondary school on the site. And that located the bulk of the school to the north of the site behind the Abbey. And I think included 5 separate buildings, the largest building being on the edge of the North Circular. A school is no longer being pursued on the site, primarily because there's a lack of interest in bringing forward a private school, because the school wouldn't have offered any public access to the metropolitan open land, potential drop-off pickup issues, and there was also a really pressing demand for local homes in the area. Next. So I'm going to hand over to David from Clarion, who's going to introduce the vision for the project.
Thank you, Laura. So I suppose that these are our sort of 6 key messages that we want to sort of take you through this evening. The first one being delivering affordable housing. There'll be 35% affordable housing delivered on the site, split between London affordable rent and shared ownership. The second point, probably the most important point, is restoring Twyford Abbey. As you've seen from the photos, it's been derelict for a number of years. So we want to bring it back into use, bring it back into its former glory, really respecting the heritage of the site, and reinstating both the listed building and the walled garden to their former glory. Providing new public open space, opening out the south lawn and the walled garden to the local community for the first time. It's always been under private ownership, so the fact that we'll be opening this out to the public under our proposals is a really exciting opportunity for us. We're also looking to improve the connectivity, reconnecting the site to the wider area through pedestrian routes, looking to boost biodiversity on the site, maintaining and enhancing the aspects that are already there, as well as adding more biodiversity to the site as well. Worth noting here that we are retaining the highest quality trees on the site, and those of the highest categorization, which are the category A trees. And finally, we are looking to deliver high quality and sustainable design on the site, really taking a sympathetic architectural approach that reflects the character of the Abbey, the walled garden, the local area as a whole, and in both the terms of design and the scale.
Thank you, David. Okay, so this next section sets out the design approach to the site. And And based on the analysis of the site I've just shown you and the heritage assets on the site, we started by identifying zones where we think there might be an opportunity to site new residential development. And the strategy is to locate the bulk of accommodation to the north of the site, behind the Abbey, in areas which are less sensitive in terms of setting, but are more open and are of poorer quality grassland. So they are the areas you can see in that yellowy colour to the northeast, northwest, and along the edge of the North Circular. And this is a landscape-led scheme. So to the South Lawn, which is the largest area of undeveloped space within the site, that would be kept free of buildings. And we propose a new public access to the South Lawn. So that would become public amenity and would also improve the setting for the listed building. Central to the project is also to save and restore the Grade 2 listed Twyford Abbey and bring that into residential use as flats. Next. So this was an earlier version of the master plan. I think some of you might have seen from the consultation before Christmas. So this showed public access to the South Lawn from Twyford Abbey Road, so opening up the site to the public, the restored Abbey, and then a series of residential pavilions, all set carefully in the landscape, to the north of the Abbey, carefully organised to work around the really most significant Cat A and Cat B trees, and to start to define new landscape amenity spaces. Next. Since we last met, we have concluded the first round of public consultation and also engagement with Eline, Historic England and the GLA. And Clarion and Reddington have reviewed feedback and are proposing some changes to the scheme. So this is the updated site layout. The first point is that the quantum of accommodation has reduced. So there's been a reduction in 40 residential units down to 325 units in total now proposed. So that's a reduction in about 5,500 metres squared of area. Secondly, number 1 on the layout, Block L to the edge of the North Circular has been removed following discussions with Eline. Block K on the plan has been remodelled to form a courtyard with amenity space to the edge of the woodland, down the edge of the West Drive. And then to the east of the site, number 4, the really significant Cat B oak tree has been retained and incorporated into the design of the new residential pavilions. And in terms of height, the height to the east of the site is now been reduced to 4 stories plus a setback story, so that the massing differs to the massing of the Abbey. And then to the south of the site, we have removed the 2 3-story gatehouses from the southern lawn. So that removes any kind of impact on the edge of Twyford Abbey Road and views to the Abbey. And we now have 2 2-story townhouses which form gatehouses to the Western Drive. Next. So building on the idea of public access to the site, Clarion and Reddington are also proposing a number of public benefits. So I've spoken about public access to the South Lawn from Twyford Abbey Road. There will also be a new public pedestrian cycle route up the West Drive, so you will be able to access that from Twyford Abbey Road, come past the Abbey, take in St Mary's Church, and then there's a new access route out onto the North Circular. There will also be public access into Twyford Abbey, the listed building, on a managed basis on open days. The public will also be able to access the walled garden, although that would be locked between dusk and dawn. And there will also be grow gardens within the walled garden. And in the event there's no take-up from residents within the site, local residents will be able to apply to use those. There will also be access for the adjacent school to the habitat areas within the site, to have access to a grow garden too. Next. So this next series of slides really sets out that journey through the site for kind of the wider community. So this is an illustrative view looking from Twyford Abbey Road to the new access through to the South Lawn, and you see the restored Abbey set in the distance. So the Abbey will have a much improved setting within the Southern Lawn. Next. As I mentioned, Twyford Abbey will be restored. There will be access at certain times of the year, for example, during the Open House Festival, and the public will be able to come in to the restored entrance hall, see the restored staircase, and then there will be a room which is one of the principal rooms on the corner of the building which overlooks the Southern Lawn, which the public will be able to access and use. Next. There will also be access to the cottage, which you can see in the top left-hand photo. That will be restored and will become a base for residents and the local community. There will be a potting shed and also a meeting room space, which will be available to hire for residents. Next. With both residents and the local community being able to really access and get the benefit of the restored walled garden, which will include an orchard and grow gardens. And that just shows the kind of the detail of the cottage. So at ground floor, there will be meeting room space. There will be a potting room, which has direct access to the walled garden to support the use of the grow gardens. Next. Yep. Next slide, please. So one of the other things that we've explored, so at the moment, the site, which you can see in red there, really acts as a barrier between the residential and green spaces to the north and the south of the site. Next. So it's proposed that we open up the site and we create better connections to Alperton and the Grand Union Canal in the north, which you can see pedestrian routes in green, cycle routes in the red. And also to the south, to the new Royal Waterside development and to Park Royal. And we'll connect up the kind of landscaped spaces of the canal, the Abbey, and then Royal Waterside, and create more sustainable pedestrian and cycle routes. So just looking in a little bit more detail now about proposals for the residential offer. So there will be a total of 325 residential units, and 30 of those will be in the refurbished Abbey. And we're currently targeting 35% affordable housing, which is based on kind of new and existing floor space based on habitable rooms. Next. So I'm going to first talk a little bit more about the east of the site. So on the east of the site, we have a series of pavilions which sit in the landscape, and they've been designed to work around some of the significant Cat B trees, including the oak tree, and the geometry responds to the geometry of the walled garden and the Abbey, and the northern end, so kind of block the C you can see on the plan has been infilled to shield the new amenity space, which sits in the middle of those blocks, from the noise and pollution of the North Circular. Next. And this is an illustrative view. So this looks, you can see the retained Cat B oak tree in its new setting. looking through to the central amenity space, which will be used by residents of the blocks. Next. In terms of massing, it's proposed that these blocks are 4 stories plus a setback story. They're set well back from the properties on Eva Avenue. So from the back of the properties on Eva Avenue to the face of the new buildings is 34 meters. So they're set well back to avoid causing any concerns about daylight, sunlight to the existing properties. And the scale of them differs to the massing of the Abbey. Next. Just in terms of noise, so obviously how we deal with noise from the North Circular is key, but the form of these blocks to the east effectively shields the amenity space from noise. So you can see there's quite a significant improvement in the quality of noise on site. Next. So just in terms of the external character of the scheme, so really, we're trying to develop an architecture which is complementary and doesn't overshadow the amazing Twyford Abbey. So Twyford Abbey was designed by William Atkinson, who was a renowned country house architect who specialised in the design of romantic Gothic country houses. And that's some historic photos you can see of Twyford Abbey. Next. And the Abbey is characterised by octagonal towers, castellated parapets, has a very vertical Gothic expression with vertical fenestration too. And it's all covered by Atkinson's very coarse textured cement. Next. And what we're trying to do is develop an architecture which is contextual, which draws on the character of the Abbey, but in a modern way. And around the time the Abbey was built, there are a number of pattern books which architects produced for the design of country houses. And Atkinson himself developed a pattern book, which you can see just in the middle of the slide, views of picturesque cottages. We're trying to develop a pattern book for the site, with elements which take inspiration from the Abbey, which we can use in slightly different combinations around each of the different housing elements to respond to the different characters of the site. Next. So this is a view from the walled garden towards the new pavilions on the east of the site. So one of the things we have done to try and make the architecture site specific is to introduce chamfers to the corners of buildings, which kind of open up and provide views over the landscape. Next. And also respond to the emphasis on corners that the architecture of the Abbey has. The Abbey has kind of octagonal towers. There are also chamfers to the walled garden. This is a view looking down the East Drive. So just like the Abbey, the new residential blocks will be glimpsed through the retained trees. So this is a view of the new proposed housing pavilion, which replaces the 1960s extension to the Abbey. So you get glimpses of it as you are kind of traveling down the Eastern Drive. Next. And here we have at the junction of the two blocks are slightly pulled apart and is glazed, so you get these really long views along the edge of the walled garden into the landscape. And then over to the west of the site. So this block has been redesigned to be more site specific, to nestle with some of the levels of the site, which start to slope down at that point. And it responds to the geometry. It creates a shielded amenity space from the noise of the North Circular, with its fourth side enclosed by the existing trees to the edge of the West Drive. Next. And this is an illustrative view. So this is looking, standing almost on the carriage drive. You see the Abbey to the right-hand side, with the idea that the new proposed housing has a series of kind of octagonal corners which start to reference the architecture of the Abbey and create special corner spaces within living rooms, which have amazing views out down the West Drive and over the walled garden. Next. And again, just in terms of massing, next to the North Circular, there will be 6 stories in height, but then that steps down to 4.5 stories and then 4 closest to the Abbey. Again, the blocks are set significantly back from Brentmead Avenue by circa 40 metres. So as I mentioned, the site has a country estate feel, and the landscape is a really crucial element of this scheme. Next. One of the most important components of the landscape design are the existing trees. So there's an existing TPO on the site. I think there's circa 318 individual trees on the site, 3 Cat A trees, and then a number of Cat B trees, which you can see on blue on that slide. Next. So to enable the development, we are retaining all the Cat A trees, which you can see in the lightest green on that slide. And we're retaining 61 of the Cat B trees. That includes all the historic Cat B trees on the south lawn, which were conceived as part of the landscape design when the Abbey was designed by William Atkinson. And then we remove a number of kind of Cat C and Cat U trees. Where we remove a tree, we will plant a new tree. Next. The other important aspect is habitat and ecology. So we're trying to improve the habitat and ecology of the site. And we will do that by a combination of wildflower meadows to the south lawn, orchard and grow garden within the walled garden, wetlands, and then flood-resistant woodland, particularly to the edge of the North Circular, and include ecological features such as bird and bat boxes. Next. We've also been very careful to consider where we have located the buildings. So this slide overlays the existing site, so you can see the proposed blocks. So we're trying to reuse existing hard surface of the 2 drives to locate the blocks to the east on current areas of hard surface, and then the other blocks to the north on areas of low value grassland, and maintain the other areas of metropolitan open land which are more significant. Next. Just in terms of car parking and circulation, so there will be a number of pedestrian routes through the site. You can see in green. The most significant of those will be coming in off Twyford Abbey Road, but also up the West Drive with the new access out onto the North Circular. There will be vehicle access to the East and the West Drive, but to avoid anyone doing effectively a circuit around the site, we have 2 retractable bollards next to the walled garden, which will avoid any resident doing a loop right around the site. And we're currently proposing 150 car parking spaces, and we're trying to locate the bulk of those to the edge of the North Circular, hidden by a shelter belt of trees. Next. Just in terms of the walled garden, so we're trying to bring this derelict space back into life, and that will include a community orchard, which you can see kind of in the centre of the walled garden, a series of grow gardens, spaces like benches and spaces for picnics, as well as incorporating some of the existing trees. And that space will be available for use by all of the community. Next. Again, just some precedents. So the idea of grow gardens, the idea of beehives to improve ecology too, as well as wildflower meadows within that space as well. And then finally, just to the edge of the North Circular, so we are trying strategically to put car parking to the north of the site, to away from areas which are important in terms of the setting of the listed building, and that the car parking will be amongst the shelter belt of trees which start to screen car parking and also improve the kind of biodiversity and urban greening factor. Next. So this is the proposed plan. The scheme will deliver an increase in urban greening factor and improve the biodiversity on the site. Lastly, just as a summary, public benefits of the scheme. So at the top of the list is really saving the grade 2 listed building, which is at risk at the moment, and giving that a new life. The range of public benefits I've outlined, including the publicly accessible open space from Twyford Abbey Road, and providing new family homes in a really family-friendly setting. That the scheme will aspire to be carbon neutral and sustainable. 325 homes, 35% of which will be affordable housing. We're retaining the most valuable, the most historic and healthy trees on the site, and we'll plant one to replace where we remove. We're enhancing the quality of the biodiversity and habitat, and also reducing noise on the site from the North Circular. And then there will be other more economic benefits in terms of apprenticeships, temporary permanent jobs, and contributions through the Section 106 and SIL agreements. So I think that brings us to the end of the presentation. I'm going to hand back over to Theo to lead the Q&A session.
Thanks, team. Thanks, Laura. That was really comprehensive. I hope you've all got a much better idea of the updated proposals. I've noticed that there's not a lot of questions. I mean, there's 0 questions actually been put in the Q&A. Luckily, I have been sent some before. So whilst I go through those questions, perhaps if any of the attendees have anything that they want to ask the project team, we've got guys here, Justin from the planning side, we've got Tim from the transport side, Laura obviously from the architect side, and David from the client side. So we do have a full complement here. So any question you have, just put in there. I think there's some coming in already. Right, well, whilst I digest that one, it's quite a long question. I'm just going to ask, I think this is one for David. Why is a housing scheme coming forward now instead of the previous school scheme?
So the school planning application was submitted in 2017. What the sort of the structure that was in place at the time has didn't come to fruition. So that there's no longer a school that's going to be on the site. The demand wasn't there from the operator, and so the current owners put the owners put the site up for sale as a school, and there was not an acceptable level of interest for them to actually accept an offer on the site on that basis. Hence why it's coming forward, and we're proposing residential use on the site, returning the Abbey building to its original use, which was as residential, as well as creating much needed affordable housing around in the new build elements around it as well. And so yeah, we're still respecting the Abbey and the building in the same way that the school application did, but it's going to be a housing scheme instead.
Okay, thanks, David. That was comprehensive. Okay, so we do have a question here, which I think is for Tim, which is about what are the plans, if any, to encourage fewer cars or perhaps provide charging points, and the attendee notes that there's already a lack of capacity from certain transport routes. It will encourage more residents to come to Park Road and Hanger Lane. So yeah, what are the measures that are being proposed to encourage fewer cars? if any?
Yeah, so reading the question, there's definitely, so there are already a number of public transport links in the area. So there's Park Royal, Hanger Lane, Stonebridge Park is a little bit further away, but that's also there, as well as the 112, 224 and 226 bus routes. So the proposed developments residents will have access to public transport in the area. We're also proposing to provide a car club space on site in order to kind of disincentivize private car ownership and rather have people only use a vehicle when it's absolutely necessary. In terms of capacity, we have engaged with Transport for London to assess and provided them with what are the current numbers in terms of how many trips we're going to generate for the site. So they're going to take that away and assess whether there's any contributions that we have to provide towards extra bus services or anything else, basically. So if that, if TfL say that there's that capacity issue and there needs to be, and something needs to be done from this development point of view, then they will request that. In terms of EV charging points, we're providing all of the car parking spaces on site with some form of EV charging. 20% will be active spaces and the rest will be passive. So what that means is that from day one, 20% of all the vehicles on site will be provided with electric vehicle charging. And then as demand arises, the rest can be easily converted. So for the passive ones, all of the infrastructure will be there. They just won't have an active charging point from the get-go, basically. So it's just London plan policy, and that's what we're following in that instance. Do you think I've answered that completely, Theo? It's quite a long question, so I hope I haven't forgotten anything.
No, it's a long question. It's a good question, an important one. I think you answered it robustly. But if anyone has any further questions on that point, just please put them in the Q&A. Yeah, there's a quick one here. The recording will be available. So after Zoom processes it, we'll be uploading onto the website. There's another question here, which maybe is one for Justin or David about the Diageo flats. Any consideration of that? I think maybe Justin, is that one for you?
Can I just clarify what the question is?
Well, it's more of a statement saying there's no mention of the impact of the Diageo flats.
I think it's relating to parking still. And the traffic related to the question that we answered, I think it's the same person, and I suppose the level of parking spaces on the Diageo sort of apartments across the road. We understand the impact that has had. There is a high quantum of traffic on Twyford Abbey Road, there's the actual number of parking spaces is supported in policy terms by the number of spaces that we're proposing on the site, and we envisage these not to be the type of car sort of residents who will be using the car every day, but more at a weekend and using the fantastic public transport to commute on a sort of daily basis. So
yeah, exactly. You're right, David. We've definitely chosen kind of a balanced approach to parking, so not providing the absolute maximum that is allowed, because there are good public transport links in the area, but providing enough parking spaces that people on site who do need a car, so I'm thinking about maybe some of the larger units for people with kids, that they will have access to a vehicle. However, there will also be a lot of people on site, maybe like myself, who live in a 1 or 2 bed flat, who don't need a car, definitely not every day, maybe at all. I would also say that we've looked at some research on this, and actually of the people who own cars in new developments in outer London, only about 37%, just off the top of my head, use their car every day, and only 15% use it 3 or 4 times a week. So there's a lot of people who actually just own a car, but they won't make trips every day, and also they won't make they won't all make trips during the peak hour. So what we're doing is we're looking at the likely trip generations, what we call it. So the number of trips this development will generate. And we do that based on surveys of other developments with similar levels of like public transport accessibility, similar numbers of units, etc. So to kind of estimate how many trips our development will generate, and to ensure that what we will do won't negatively, like in any significant way, negatively impact on congestion on the local highway network.
Okay, thanks, team. I think we covered that off comprehensively. Question here, I think, for Justin. What is the timetable for the development, planning, and then development construction, I guess, as well?
Yeah, I think this is partially answered by me on the planning side, and then if David could answer from a Clarion construction side. So from a planning point of view, the application is to be submitted in May coming up. And we would expect the local authority to probably take well, anywhere between 3 and 6 months to determine the application. And then if it is approved, then I would imagine it would probably take a further, well, 6 to 12 months to discharge the prior to commencement conditions before work can commence on site. And then over to David in terms of the construction side.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. So yeah, exactly right. And that probably takes broadly to middle of next year at the latest to start the construction. And it's about a 4 or 5 year construction period. We've not got into the further detail of that to sort of publish yet, but that's the broad timeline. So we're really keen to start on site as soon as possible and start delivering affordable homes as early as possible as well.
Okay, thanks both. Okay, a little bit more on parking here. And there's a question we have about whether there's any, oh, sorry, Laura, did you want to come in on that?
No, I think Tom also raised the point. It's not the development to Royal Ward, so it's not just about parking and transport, it's about the lack of communal feel. And I just want to say that Clarion will be, retain long-term stewardship of the Twyford Abbey site. And it's very much that they want to build a community, but also involve the wider community. I think that's why there's been an emphasis on trying to extend the routes to the north and the south of the site to make those connections and open up the site, but also to involve the local school. There are plans to involve the local church as well in terms of how they use the site as well. And that the local community outside the site will be able to come in and use the south lawn and also the walled garden too. So I hope all those things together will create a good community atmosphere and more sense of belonging. Thanks,
Laura. Yeah, thanks for touching on that question. I think we'll just touch on parking a little bit more, and then we'll probably move on to some other questions, because I'm aware that we focused this Q&A on that bit in particular, which obviously is an important issue. We do have another question here, which is whether there's any other developments that we've looked at to kind of give us an understanding of whether the parking spaces provided on this will be sufficient, or is there any other schemes that have been borne in mind?
Yes, definitely. So as I mentioned before, so the way that we calculate the number of trips that this development will generate is by looking at surveys of other developments. So there's basically a huge database of developments that have come in. I believe that we've looked at stuff that's come in over like the last 5 years, basically. So fairly like recent other developments of similar size. I'm completely blanking on the names, I'm afraid, but they will be in the transport assessment that we submit as part of the planning applications. That will all be available for everybody to have a look at, etc. But yeah, so we're doing that, and then we're also looking at how many parking spaces were provided for those developments, how much traffic that generates, etc. So yes, that definitely we are looking at comparative development in the area. Let's see. And just because I already see that Tom has asked about the transport links being at max capacity. So I know that Transport for London are looking at upgrading of the Piccadilly line, which definitely will help at Park Royal. So that is a long-term kind of thing through the Mayor's transport strategy. So that investment is coming. And as I said, definitely, we're engaging with TfL bus people, with the London Underground team as well. So they will have access to all the impact assessment that we're providing for the proposed development. So if they think, that there is additional capacity required, then they can request contributions through Section 106. And yeah, that's the way that we will handle that.
Okay, thanks, Tim. You're a chair's dream. So just going to touch on a few other points, and we'll come back to the Q&A. So I think we're just going to touch on the justification for building on metropolitan open land, which I know is a point for you, Justin. So yeah, what is the justification for building on metropolitan open land?
Okay, thank you. Good question. Metropolitan open land is normally, as you can imagine, open land open to the public, and land that is visible to the public. In this case, we're clearly not in that context, because we're not open to the public, we're not visible to the public, generally speaking. And normally, therefore, developing on public open land is normally deemed to be inappropriate unless you can demonstrate what's referred to in planning speak as very special circumstances. And what that really means is you're creating harm, but what are the benefits, and do the benefits outweigh the harm? So the harm in this case is loss of MOL, and the benefits in our case, do they outweigh the loss of MOL? We've discussed briefly some of the benefits, but it's worth just mentioning, obviously, the extant permission, the school permission, it was deemed to have very special circumstances at that point in time. And that was on the basis that it would bring back the listed building into use and save the Category A on the register, Historic England Register of Category A building at risk, to bring that back into, to save it, to bring it back into use. And that justified effectively the development of the school. In this case, we are proposing a similar scenario, in the sense that we are saving the listed building again. We're bringing it back into use, as David mentioned, back into a residential use. But also the benefits of the scheme are greater than the extant permission. Notwithstanding that, this scheme has to stand on its own merits, and our benefits, as you can imagine, are saving the listed building, but we've talked about the delivery of affordable homes. The delivery of private homes is also very special circumstances. The significant public open space that's being delivered, in the walled garden access and access through the site is also a significant benefit. We talked about jobs creations and apprenticeships, Section 106 SILD and new homes bonus. Access to grow gardens. So all of these benefits are considered in the round against the harm. And in our circumstances, we believe our benefits significantly outweigh the harm. So that's it in a nutshell.
Thanks, Justin. That hopefully makes things a bit clearer, what can be a fairly complicated planning issue. So thanks for explaining that in such detail. Laura, I'm just going to ask you a question about tree removal and replanting. I know you touched on this in the presentation. Perhaps if you just to repeat and to summarize, what is the policy of removing trees and then replanting them?
So we're trying to, we are retaining the most significant Cat A trees on site. There are 3 of those, and we're retaining the most significant Cat B trees on the southern lawn of the Abbey. We've also taken care to the north of the site to try and work around as much as we can the really significant Cat B oak tree to the east side of the site. Where we need to remove trees, and a lot of those are kind of Cat C or Cat U trees, we will plant a new tree, minimum kind of 1-to-1 replacements. Okay,
thanks for that. It's nice and clear. I'm going to stick with you, Laura, actually, because I'm going to ask you about overlooking, because I know some people always have a worry about whether their existing properties, and in particular the school, are going to be overlooked by the new development. Is that an issue, or what has been done to counter that?
Yeah, so we've orientated the blocks so that they don't overlook the school, kind of on the northeastern edge, and then the properties, the new proposed development on the east and the western side is to the north is set well back inside the site. The properties on Eva Avenue and Brentmead Gardens also have very deep back gardens too. So they're set well back to avoid any issues in terms of daylight, sunlight, and overlooking.
Okay, thank you. Covers that one off. Okay, so we've got a question in the Q&A box about the heritage and also about the local amenities provided. So that the point here is that there's a lack of new amenities provided, but there's been a lot more apartments and flats provided. So are there any plans for any commercial use, a cafe, takeaway, restaurant? I think there might be one for David.
Yeah, I'm happy to take this one. So a key priority for Ealing is new homes and affordable housing. As an affordable housing provider, we are keen to help Ealing on this journey. So as part of this development, we're proposing it to be residential rather than have the amenities that you've suggested there. There are contributions that we make, as has been mentioned previously, through community infrastructure levy and section 106, and these contributions go towards sort of the council provided local amenities that developments might need. So yeah, we're not proposing a cafe or takeaway food on this site.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that, David. Easy question here, which I think I will answer, which is there any way basically of getting in touch? Is there any team member that someone can liaise with, particularly about the history of the site? I would point you to Twyford Abbey, londoncommunications.co.uk. And if you kind of go there as a first step, then I'll put you in touch with the relevant team member. I think, Laura, you've got your hand up.
Yep. Peter, I'd be really delighted to talk to you about Thomas Willen and your involvement with the history of the Abbey. But we really welcome that. So maybe Theo can connect us to have a more detailed conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Laura. I mean, it's quite rare that we do get a descendant of of a scheme like this. So it is a real pleasure, and certainly happy to arrange that. So yeah, please do that's the email, and we'll take it from there. Okay. We're going to talk, actually, whilst we're talking about the heritage of the area, and as we have a descendant of Willen here, we're going to talk about how the design of the buildings. So, I mean, I know Laura touched on this earlier, but perhaps you could just summarize how the design kind of, responds to the existing Abbey and also to the wider area of Twyford.
Yep. So the Abbey is, Grade 2 listed. It's the most important building on the site. So now we were trying to develop a contemporary architecture which references some of the beautiful details of the Abbey, but do it in a slightly modern way, but that the architecture is very background and quiet, so it doesn't detract from the Abbey or its setting.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, David, I've got a question for you about construction disruption. I know we talked a little bit about the timetable and how long things are going to take. But I mean, what are the kind of standard operating measures that Clarion and Latimer have for minimizing construction disruption?
Yeah, so as we've already spoken about traffic, we know that's a key element of this site, and our construction logistics plan will take this into account to try and avoid adding to the traffic during construction, understanding the busy time sort of between 4 and 6 p.m. Also aware of the primary school, school pick up and drop off times, ensuring that sort of liaising with the school to make sure that they're that we sort of try and work with their term times and the sort of exam times as well. In terms of actual sort of access to the site, there's proposed to be a sort of have banksmen on the entrances to the site to ensure that they vehicles can move in and out without causing too much trouble and disruption to pedestrians. But yeah, the detail of this we're putting together in a construction logistics plan, which will go in as part of the planning application. So yeah.
Great, thanks for laying out, David. I should note that there's further information on the website on construction. So if you just check out twyfordabbey.co.uk, you'll see the exhibition boards, and there's a specific section on construction. So actually, I think I'm going to ask the final question we've got in the Q&A box here, which is, I think it's another one for you, David, about the townhouses and about the shared ownership component. Can you explain a little bit about where the shared ownership will be on the site, or there's a mix, or?
Yeah, so the shared ownership is proposed to be in the 1, 2, and 3 bedroom properties within the new build apartments. So there aren't currently proposed to be the private for sale element will be part of that will be formed by the townhouses. So they won't form part of the affordable offering just because of the demand for shared ownership tends to be more apartment based from our experience.
Okay, just got one final question. I think I might just stick with you, David, which is actually just to repeat. What are the benefits of the scheme? Why should local people support the scheme? What are the benefits?
Yeah, so we're really excited to be bringing forward Twyford Abbey. It's an incredible building locally, and I'll sort of, I think first of all is bringing a new lease of life to that Grade 2 listed building. It's on Historic England's at-risk register. The deteriorating condition means that works need to happen soon in order to save it from further decay. And we're really keen to save Twyford Abbey. There's an opportunity for publicly accessible open space onto the site. It's previously been private and inaccessible. Clarion intends to retain a long-term interest in the site, and we therefore have a vested interest in this long-term stewardship in ensuring that the landscape is designed to be safe and manageable for the long term. We also have an aspiration for this scheme to be net zero carbon compatible, and therefore have no fossil fuels being used for heating on the site by using either air source heat pumps or ground source heat pumps. It is being designed as sustainably as possible using the GLA's principles of be lean, be clean, and be green. We're bringing new affordable housing to the area. We're providing new homes, 325 new homes to the area, and affordable housing for those who are in need of homes in the most. I think finally, we are intending to retain and protect the most valuable and healthy trees, including all of the Category A trees and the majority of Category B trees. We've got a replanting strategy to replace those that are lost, and the landscape design is really important to help us enhance and improve the air quality locally, as well as the biodiversity, ecology, and habitat. So yeah, I'd just like to say thank you for those who are attending this evening. I don't know if there's any other questions, Theo, but I'll hand back to you either way.
Thank you, David. Yeah, I think that I've exhausted the questions that we had from before, and also the questions given on the night. So yeah, big thank you, first of all, to everyone attending, for everyone listening, giving your time on a Wednesday evening to listen to this presentation, very informative presentation. Thanks again to the panel for running us through the plans and for answering the questions so comprehensively. Just like to repeat again, if you've got any further questions you want to ask, if you've got any other queries, you want to get in touch, that's the email on the screen there, twyfordabbey@londoncommunications.co.uk. I would also suggest you go to the website, not only to see the boards and also to see the webinar recording when it's uploaded tomorrow at some point, but also to fill in, there's a feedback area where you can fill in your thoughts there. So that's it really. Big thank you again. And yeah, speak to you soon. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.